In this video, we will demonstrate various components of how to create a Google form. Let's start creating a Google form. Start out our Google Drive, go to New, click on New, roll down to Google Forms. This should start a new Google form. We are going to update the untitled form here in the center. I'm going to call it My First Form. I also have the title of my form up here. If I've entered the form in the body, I simply have to click the title and it will update with the title in the body. You can change it to something else, but if it's the same thing, all you have to do is type it once. The next component is to enter in either a description or directions for the following form in this space here. You can leave this blank if you desire. You'll notice also below it, there is already a question area set up. If I click on that module, additional items open up, and I have the ability to enter in a question here. And you'll also notice that a multiple choice option has been selected. If you click on this drop down, you will see there are multiple question types. Please go to this website to see all the various options and how they can best support you. When I take a look at my questions, I have a toolbar that rides along next to it. Here are some things to note. My first option here is add a question. When I click on that button, it adds another dialog box for another question. And you'll notice it moves down with that particular question. The next icon is import questions. If you have questions from another form that you want to use here, simply click this, select that other form, and select the questions that you want to use. The next option is title and description, where I can insert another title and description, either to break up the various form sections or form question types or various additional instructions that may need to be given. If I want to add an image, I simply click on this icon here, and I can add either an image from my device, the camera that's on the device, a web page from the internet, Google Drive, or looking through my Google Images. This icon here allows me to add a YouTube video as part of your form question. And finally, add a section. This will break the forms into sections. Let's take a look at the question box. Within the question box, you ask your question here in the center. When I add responses, sometimes Google helps. For example, I'm going to add an A, and you'll notice that Google starts to respond and give me suggestions on what other responses I might be able to add. You can add 1, 2, or add all. Simply click on the link and it will provide those additional options for you. If this question is set up in a manner where you want to duplicate it multiple times because you have questions that need this particular format, you can simply duplicate this question box and all the various components would be then copied from one question dialog box to another. If this question is no longer needed, simply click on the delete key. Now you'll notice that next to each of the question options, I can remove a question if I no longer need it. Simply click the X and remove the question. If this question needs to be answered by the respondent, you can require the question by moving the slider bar so that it is colored. If you need to move the question from one spot to another, you simply grip it by the grippers and move the question to a different spot on your form. You can randomize the question by coming here to the 3 dots or the More option, clicking on it, and you can shuffle the order of the responses. When you click on this, every time the form generates, the responses will be in a different spot. You can also add additional options where responses will dictate which section a particular answer will go to. So if I click on Go to Section based on answer, I will then have options for where that question response may go to. So I may have a section where response A will take them somewhere, response B will take them to a different section, or response C will take them to another section. For this to work, you need a minimum of 2 sections. Now, currently I only have 1 section, so it only goes to 1 or submit the form. But if I had another section, which I'm going to add right now, I have another section, come back, you will now see that I can go to either section 1 or section 2. Add your questions, add your responses, and repeat as necessary. Let's take a look at settings. In settings, we want to take a look at responses. Limiting the form to 1 response will take a look at the user's IP address and only allow 1 response from that IP address. The remaining options here all require the user to have a Google linked email for them to function as desired. This may have an adverse effect if you're trying to collect responses from folks who may not have a Google linked email or an SDP email. So please consider these options before you turn them on. By default, all School District of Philadelphia forms are restricted to School District of Philadelphia users. We can simply turn that off so that we can send the form home to anyone outside the School District of Philadelphia, and this will work. Additionally, we can also personalize the form by clicking up here in the Customize Theme area, or we can change the header, we can change the color, we can change the text. Those are all various options to modify your particular form. Let's take a look at responses. Let's take a look at a form that has already taken in data. By default, the form is ready to take responses. When you want to stop taking responses, simply click on the slider to turn it off, and it will no longer take responses. Let's take a look at the rest of the responses. When we enter, we see 3 tabs: summary, question, and individual. The summary gives us a chart regarding the form as a whole and breaks it down. I can also look at data question by question. I can jump from question to question and see all the responses for that particular question. If I look at the individual, this will now look at the respondents and how they answered all of their questions. This is what it looks like if you collected emails. This could also be respondent 1, respondent 2, respondent 3 if you did not collect identifying markers. Also in the header, you will see View in Sheets. This is a link to all the responses to all the questions in a Google Sheet response. When I click on this, it will open a new Google Sheet and demonstrate all the questions and all the responses and when folks responded in a spreadsheet form. One of the things to consider is when you reuse the form, we're going to click on the 3 dots here, and you may choose to unlink the form. This will separate the Google Sheet. How do I get my form to all the folks I need? Well, let's click on the Send button. When you hit the Send button, you have several options. 1, email all your participants. Simply put all their email addresses in here, and if they are School District of Philadelphia users, you simply start typing their email address. A list will appear, select their name, and then click the comma to separate all email addresses. When all have been added, simply hit send, and all of the users will receive an email. You also have the link option. It will give you a Google link that you can copy and embed in an email or a web page or wherever you want. Now, if this form may need to be typed out because you're putting it in a presentation, you may choose to shorten that URL so that it is a little bit easier to type for users. Finally, you have embedded HTML code. If you are working with a web page designer, you can take this code here. You will have the form embedded so that users do not have to leave your current web page to fill out the form. They simply fill it in within a window inside your web page.